You wake up again with that same sore throat. It feels dry when you breathe and hurts when you swallow. You try warm water or a lozenge, maybe even take medicine. It helps for a day or two, but the pain always comes back. For many people, this has become normal. They think it's just the way life is now, especially when the seasons change. But that's not how it always was. For most of human history, people didn't go through this kind of cycle again and again. Now let's look at the Vikings. They lived in places where the winters were brutally cold. Their homes were often wet because of the rain and snow outside. Inside their longhouses, they kept fires burning for heat, but there were no chimneys. The smoke stayed trapped inside the room, and people breathed it in every day. Their food was basic. It didn't include fresh fruits or vegetables most of the time. They mostly ate dried grains, salted fish, or cooked meat. They didn't have hospitals to treat them when they got sick, and they had no idea what germs or viruses were. If we compare their life to ours, it seems like they should have been sick all the time. One of the main reasons modern people get sick so often is indoor air. Most people now spend the majority of their lives inside enclosed buildings. These spaces are designed to be sealed and stable rather than breathable. Air enters through controlled systems and is circulated repeatedly instead of being replaced. While this air may feel comfortable, it lacks the natural moisture and biological balance found outdoors. Indoor air directly affects the throat. The surface of the throat is protected by a thin layer of mucus that acts as a physical barrier. This layer traps dust, bacteria, and viruses before they reach the lungs. When air is dry, this protective layer begins to lose moisture. Over time, it becomes thinner and more fragile. Microscopic damage forms along the surface, creating easy entry points for infection. This process explains why sore throats increase during colder months, even though viruses remain present throughout the year. Viking homes functioned very differently. Longhouses were not sealed environments. Airflow was built into their structure. Smoke from the central fire rose and exited through roof openings, which continuously pulled fresh air inside. This constant movement prevented stale air from settling and reduced the concentration of airborne pathogens. Because these homes were open to the surrounding environment, humidity levels remained closer to natural outdoor conditions. Cold air by itself does not make people sick. Illness becomes more likely when air stops moving and loses moisture. The human throat depends on humidity to stay protected. When air is dry, the surface of the throat becomes irritated and vulnerable. Vikings lived in environments where air constantly moved and retained natural moisture. This created conditions that supported respiratory health instead of weakening it. Modern, indoor heating systems are built to stabilize buildings, not to protect the human body. Forced air heating warms rooms evenly, but it does not account for how people actually breathe. Warm air rises and gathers near ceilings, while the air around the face and throat becomes drier. When heat is increased, humidity drops even further. The throat loses moisture faster, making irritation more likely and recovery slower. Vikings treated heating as something meant for the human body, rather than the room itself. Their fires were placed low and open, producing radiant heat that warmed people directly instead of drying the surrounding air. It stayed close to the skin and clothing, allowing the air to remain cool and naturally humid. Thick clothing, animal furs, and shared sleeping arrangements trapped body heat efficiently. This method prevented heat loss without overheating the environment. Because the air stayed cooler, it did not strip moisture from the throat or nasal passages. The respiratory system remained protected rather than inflamed. Sleeping in cool air while keeping the body warm supports normal blood flow in the throat. When indoor air becomes overheated and dry, blood vessels tighten and tissue becomes irritated. This reaction increases inflammation and makes the throat more vulnerable to infection. Cooler air with sufficient moisture avoids this response and allows the throat to stay balanced during rest. Many sore throats begin during sleep rather than during the day. This happens because modern bedrooms often work against the immune system. Sealed rooms, dry heated air, and long periods of exposure weaken the throat while the body is repairing itself. The immune system is not designed to exist in perfectly sterile conditions. It is meant to interact with the environment, learn from exposure, and strengthen through contact. Modern life removes much of this process. Constant sanitation and controlled environments reduce natural challenges. Over time, the immune system loses balance. It reacts strongly to minor irritants and responds poorly to real threats. This imbalance makes frequent minor illness more likely, not less. Vikings lived with constant low-level exposure to their environment. Their daily life included contact with smoke, soil, animals, cold air, and naturally occurring bacteria. This exposure was not extreme, but it was consistent. Over time, their immune systems adapted to these conditions in the same way muscles adapt to regular physical work. Because of this exposure, their bodies learned how to respond correctly. The immune system became skilled at recognizing real threats. When viruses entered the throat, the response was fast and controlled rather than excessive and painful. Inflammation stayed limited instead of spiraling out of control. From an early age, children were exposed to the same environment as adults. They played outdoors in rain and snow without insulation from nature. Adults worked in physically demanding conditions year-round. Daily life was never temperature-controlled or sealed off from the elements. This continuous exposure created immune resilience that lasted throughout life. Modern people experience something very different. The immune system now encounters sudden environmental changes without preparation. A minor drop in temperature, a dry indoor breeze, or prolonged exposure to recycled air can trigger irritation. The response is often exaggerated because the system lacks regular conditioning. Most sore throats are not caused by infection alone. In many cases, the problem begins with chronic inflammation. Modern diets contribute heavily to this condition. Regular consumption of highly processed foods disrupts immune signaling and weakens the body's ability to regulate inflammatory responses. Over time, throat tissue becomes more sensitive and reactive. Viking diets supported immune stability rather than inflammation. Their food was dense in nutrients and consumed close to its natural state. Meals provided the building blocks needed for tissue repair and immune balance. This nutritional foundation helped the body respond efficiently without excessive swelling or irritation. Fermented foods played a central role in this system. They were not occasional supplements, but a normal part of daily eating. Fermented milk was especially common and later became known as skaya. This food was thick and sour, created through slow natural fermentation rather than processing. Fermentation broke down lactose and made the food easier to digest. At the same time, it supported beneficial gut bacteria that influenced immune regulation. A stable gut environment helped control inflammation throughout the body. This included inflammation in the throat and airways, which reduced the likelihood of recurring soreness. Another important food was soured whey, a liquid left over from cheese and skaya production. Vikings drank this daily, sometimes replacing water entirely during certain seasons. Soured whey was rich in probiotics and mild natural acids that prevented harmful bacteria from growing in the gut. This constant intake helped maintain a balanced internal environment, which allowed the immune system to respond calmly to infections instead of overreacting with swelling and pain. Vikings also consumed fermented fish, especially in coastal regions. Fish was preserved by salting and controlled fermentation, not refrigeration. During fermentation, beneficial bacteria developed while harmful microbes were suppressed. This made the fish safer to eat and easier to digest, while also supporting gut health. The high omega-3 content in fish further reduced inflammation throughout the body, including sensitive throat tissues. In addition to dairy and fish, Vikings fermented vegetables and grains, even if these foods were simpler than modern versions. Cabbage, roots, and grains were often stored in conditions that allowed mild fermentation. These foods provided fiber and natural bacteria that fed the gut microbiome. Fiber acted as fuel for good bacteria, allowing them to grow and protect the immune system from within. Honey-based fermentation also existed in the form of mead, which, when consumed in small amounts, carried antibacterial properties from raw honey. While not a daily health food, it still contributed to microbial exposure and balance rather than sterilization. Vikings did not have antibiotics, but they did not live without protection. Honey was a daily food and medicine. Raw honey coats the throat, reduces bacterial growth, and supports tissue repair. It is not a coincidence that modern studies confirm honey is effective against throat infections. They also used herbs like thyme, juniper, yarrow, and garlic, often mixed into food or brewed into simple drinks. These herbs have antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties. Even smoke exposure from hearth fires reduced airborne bacteria when balanced with ventilation. Modern homes remove smoke completely, but replace it with recycled air. Vikings balanced exposure instead of eliminating it. Modern people fear cold exposure. You rush indoors, overdress, and heat spaces excessively. This weakens blood vessel response. When cold air hits your throat, circulation does not adapt quickly, causing irritation and swelling. Vikings lived with cold daily. Their blood vessels adapted. Cold exposure improved circulation, immune cell movement, and tissue resilience. Their throats did not panic when exposed to cold air. Cold adaptation is real. Vikings trained it naturally through lifestyle. Modern bedrooms are sealed environments. Dry air, artificial materials, and synthetic bedding dry out your throat while you sleep. You breathe damaged air for hours without realizing it. Vikings did not heat the air they breathed. They insulated their bodies. Animal furs, wool blankets, and layered clothing trapped heat close to the skin while allowing the surrounding air to remain cool and moist. Breathing cool air during sleep reduces throat inflammation and encourages nasal breathing, which naturally filters, warms, and humidifies incoming air before it reaches the throat. Viking sleeping surfaces also mattered. Beds were made from straw, hay, or wooden platforms covered with natural fibers. These materials absorbed moisture and released it slowly into the air, helping maintain humidity levels overnight. Unlike modern synthetic mattresses, they did not trap heat or emit dry, artificial air around the face and neck. Fire placement also played a role. Hearth fires were usually reduced or carefully controlled at night, producing residual warmth without constant smoke or overheating. The remaining warmth kept bodies comfortable, while airflow continued to refresh the air. This prevented the dry, overheated conditions that damage throat tissue in modern bedrooms. Modern stress is constant and invisible. Screens, notifications, artificial light, and sleep disruption suppress immune function. Chronic stress weakens your body's ability to fight throat infections. Viking stress was real, but it was physical, natural, and temporary, not constant and psychological like modern stress. Physical stress comes from effort that the body understands, such as movement, resistance, cold, and work that has a clear beginning and end. This type of stress activates the nervous system briefly and then allows it to return to a resting state, which actually strengthens immunity instead of damaging it. One major source of physical stress for Vikings was daily labor. Farming, fishing, hunting, wood chopping, shipbuilding, and tool-making required full-body movement. These tasks raised heart rate, increased breathing, and activated muscles. But once the work was finished, the stress stopped. The body then entered recovery mode. This cycle of effort followed by rest trained the nervous system to switch off stress properly, allowing immune repair to happen. Modern clothing looks comfortable, but it works against your biology. Synthetic fabrics trap moisture, block airflow, and create temperature instability around the neck and chest. When you sweat slightly and then cool down, that trapped moisture chills your throat area. This repeated micro-cooling inflames throat tissues and weakens local immune defense. Vikings wore natural fibers almost exclusively. Wool, linen, leather, and animal fur were breathable and temperature regulating. Wool, in particular, is antibacterial and moisture balancing. It keeps the body warm while allowing excess moisture to escape. This prevented dampness around the throat and chest, even in cold climates. Scarves, cloaks, and layered collars protected the neck without sealing it. Air could still circulate. Heat stayed close to the skin without overheating the throat area. Modern jackets often seal the neck tightly while trapping dry, artificial heat inside, which dries out mucous membranes. Vikings did not bundle up the way modern people do. They layered intelligently. Modern hygiene focuses on sterilization, antibacterial soaps, chemical cleaners, sanitizers, and wipes remove almost all microbial life. This does not make you stronger. It makes your immune system weaker and more reactive. Viking hygiene was practical and consistent, not extreme or obsessive. One of the most important habits was regular washing with water, especially of the hands, face, neck, and hair. Vikings lived near rivers, streams, lakes, and coastal water, and they used these natural water sources frequently. They also used natural soaps made from animal fat mixed with wood ash. This created a basic soap that could break down grease and kill many harmful microbes. These soaps were not antibacterial in the modern chemical sense. They cleaned effectively, but still allowed normal skin bacteria to survive. Steam bathing was another key hygiene method. Vikings used steam rooms similar to early saunas, especially in Nordic regions. Heated stones were splashed with water to create steam, which opened pores, increased circulation, and helped remove toxins through sweat. Steam also loosened mucus in the airways and reduced bacteria on the skin. After steaming, people often rinsed with cool water, which strengthened circulation and immune response. Hair and beard care was taken seriously. Vikings used combs made from bone or wood and cleaned their hair regularly. Clean hair reduced lice, skin infections, and bacteria buildup around the face and neck. This lowered the chance of infections spreading, especially in communal living spaces where many people shared the same air. The light smoke passing through Viking homes helped reduce the number of pathogens in the air, on walls, and on surfaces. This lowered the chance of infections spreading, especially in communal living spaces where many people shared the same air. Another important benefit of smoke was pest control. Smoke repelled flies, mosquitoes, lice, and other insects that carry disease. By reducing insects inside living spaces, Vikings indirectly reduced skin infections, throat irritation from insect bites, and contamination of food. Modern homes rely on chemicals for this purpose, while Vikings achieved it naturally. Modern medicine is powerful for emergencies. It is terrible for prevention. Throat sprays numb pain but do not fix dryness. Antibiotics kill bacteria but damage gut immunity. Painkillers reduce inflammation temporarily but weaken healing signals. Honey Vikings used raw honey for sore throats, coughs, and infections. It coated the throat, reduced bacteria, and helped damaged tissue heal naturally. Unlike modern sprays, it treated irritation instead of only numbing pain. Herbs like thyme and garlic thyme was used to ease breathing and throat irritation, while garlic acted as a natural antibiotic. These herbs fought infection without destroying gut bacteria. This kept immunity strong and balanced. Bone broth. Warm bone broth was used as both food and medicine. It provided minerals and collagen that repaired throat lining and supported immunity. It also kept the throat moist and reduced inflammation. Vikings did not avoid sickness because life was easy. They avoided sickness because life was correctly difficult. Their environment matched human biology. Yours does not. Your sore throat is not random. It is feedback. Fix the environment and the symptom disappears.